The Puritan Age, spanning roughly from 1620 to 1660, marks a significant transition in English literature, as it reflects the social, political, and religious upheavals that defined the period. Literature during this era was heavily influenced by Puritanism, a religious reform movement that sought to purify the Church of England from within. This movement was both a spiritual and political force that shaped not only the religious practices of the time, but also the literature, language, and worldview of the era. To understand the literature of the Puritan Age, it is crucial to delve into its roots in the English Reformation. The Puritan movement grew out of dissatisfaction with the perceived remnants of Roman Catholic practices within the Church of England. Influenced strongly by the Calvinist doctrine of predestination, Puritans emphasized personal Bible reading, moral rigor, and a direct relationship with God. Their opposition to the Anglican Church's hierarchical structure and ornate rituals put them at odds with the monarchy, especially with monarchs like James I and Charles I, who upheld the divine right of kings. The Gunpowder Plot of 1605, an attempt by Catholic conspirators to assassinate King James I, heightened religious tensions and led to increased persecution and scrutiny of dissenting religious groups, including Puritans. By the 1640s, tensions between the monarchy and Parliament, where Puritans had significant influence, erupted into the English Civil War. One of the most significant political figures of this era was Oliver Cromwell, 1599 to 1658, a staunch Puritan who led parliamentary forces to victory and later ruled as Lord Protector of the Commonwealth. His military and political success emboldened the Puritan cause and allowed their austere moral vision to influence public life. In contrast, Archbishop William Laud, 1573 to 1645, an ally of Charles I, enforced strict adherence to Anglican practices. His opposition to Puritanism led to his downfall and eventual execution. King Charles I from 1600 to 1649, a devout supporter of the High Anglican Church, dismissed Parliament multiple times and attempted to rule without them, leading to his trial and execution in 1649, a unique event in English history that shocked Europe and paved the way for Puritan rule. Puritan literature reflects the religious and moral concerns of the time. The themes are often didactic, introspective, and focused on the individual's relationship with God. Key characteristics include a plain style. Unlike the elaborate styles of earlier periods, Puritan literature often employed plain and direct language to reflect truth and avoid vanity. Religious content. Sermons, theological treatises, and scriptural interpretations dominated. And moral purpose. Literature was often used as a tool for moral and spiritual instruction. Introspective tone. Diaries, journals, and confessional writings reflected intense personal reflection. Milton is the towering figure of Puritan literature. His epic poem Paradise Lost, 1667, explores the fall of man and the justice of God's actions. The poem reflects Puritan concerns with obedience, divine justice, and redemption. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. Paradise Lost. Milton's prose, works like Areopagitica, championed freedom of the press and are foundational texts in political philosophy. Bunyan's The Pilgrim's Progress, 1678, is a Christian allegory that dramatizes the spiritual journey of an everyman figure named Christian. This hill, though high, I covet to ascend. The difficulty will not me offend. The narrative uses accessible language and compelling imagery to guide readers through the trials of a life of faith. It became one of the most widely read books in the English-speaking world. A clergyman and theologian, Baxter's The Saints' Everlasting Rest, 1650, is a devotional classic that reflects on the eternal rewards of the faithful. These theologians produced volumes of sermons and meditations that contributed significantly to Puritan thought, focusing on God's attributes, sin, and grace. A Puritan poet in the American colonies, Bradstreet's poetry combines religious devotion with reflections on domestic life. Her collection, The 10th Muse, lately sprung up in America, 1650, is one of the earliest volumes of poetry written by a woman in the New World. A London turner and diarist, Wallington's extensive journals provide a window into the spiritual anxieties of ordinary Puritans. His writings reveal how deeply introspective and self-critical Puritan spirituality could be. Women such as Mary Rowlandson, whose The Sovereignty and Goodness of God recounts her captivity by Native Americans, add diversity to the Puritan canon. These narratives reflect theological interpretation of suffering and providence. Puritan writings often revolved around profound theological and moral themes. Conflict between flesh and spirit. The struggle between worldly temptations and spiritual goals is a dominant motif. Predestination and divine grace. Echoing Calvinist doctrines, many works reflect on the mystery of salvation. Fear of damnation. A sense of existential dread pervades much of Puritan writing. A Christian journey. Imagery. As in The Pilgrim's Progress, the soul's journey toward salvation is depicted as a literal and metaphorical quest. Duty and divine calling. Life was seen as a calling from God, and literature frequently emphasized hard work, piety, and moral discipline. Prominent critics have weighed in on the richness and depth of Puritan literature. C.S. Lewis admired Milton's intellectual grandeur and theological scope, calling Paradise Lost the most sublime of all epic poems. T.S. Eliot, though critical of some Puritan rigidity, acknowledged the brilliance of the metaphysical poets, many of whom overlapped with Puritan themes. Barbara Lewalski and Douglas Bush have provided extensive scholarly analysis on how Puritan theology shaped literary forms and genres. To understand the Puritan Age in context, it helps to compare it with adjacent periods. Elizabethan Age, 1558 to 1603. Characterized by exuberant drama, humanism, and a celebration of life. Writers like Shakespeare and Marlowe explored a wide range of secular themes. In contrast, Puritan literature was more somber, moralistic, and religiously motivated. Restoration Age, 1660 to 1689, marked by a reaction against Puritan severity. Satirical and libertine literature by writers like Dryden and Rochester highlighted excess and wit. The Restoration's emphasis on worldly pleasures stood in sharp contrast to the Puritan call for piety and restraint. The Puritan literary legacy extends well beyond the 17th century. American literature. Puritan values of hard work, moral seriousness, and individual responsibility laid the foundation for early American writing. Political philosophy. Milton's political tracts influenced later thinkers such as Locke and Jefferson. Prose style. The plain style of Puritan writers had a lasting impact on English prose, favoring clarity and earnestness. The Puritan Age in English literature represents a moment when literature and theology were deeply intertwined. It was a period of introspection, religious fervor, and moral rigor. Though often overshadowed by the drama of the Elizabethan era or the wit of the Restoration, the Puritan Age produced works of profound spiritual insight and literary excellence. From the towering epics of Milton to the humble diaries of Wallington, Puritan literature continues to offer rich insights into the human soul's struggle for salvation and meaning. In its spiritual depth, moral passion, and linguistic clarity, the literature of the Puritan Age remains a vital part of the English literary heritage.